when you were here before. Can look you in the eye. You're very special. Gonna make me cry. You look like a world. So very special. Wish I was special. I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What am I doing? I don't belong here. I don't care if it hurts. Wanna have control. I want a perfect body. I want a perfect soul. I want you to notice when I'm not around. So very special. Very special. Ooh, she's running out the door. She's running out. She's run. Run, run, run. Whatever makes you happy, whatever you want. So very special. Wish I was special. All right. Good morning, everybody. All right. Here we are on BPH Breakdown. Trying it for a second time to see where it goes. And yes, always have to bring out the hat in remembrance of one of my very first patients, a 70-year-old who was a victim of the polypharmacy epidemic. And unfortunately, no one had done an evaluation, got a bladder health baseline, and already when his IPSS was in the 30s and living an absolutely miserable life, little did we all know that his prostate was actually 200 grams. And when faced with the prospect of either doing an open, simple prostatectomy or living his miserable life, he chose the one path that he could control. And so he took a gun and shot and killed himself. And so in his remembrance, that we recognize the gravity of what we do every day as defenders of the detrusers, as we save more bladders all the time in our daily work and the spaces that we inhabit and transform. We just recognize the seriousness of what we do. So here on this first slide, this is talking about really that we have, in this golden era of BPH, we have our cystoscopic swords, we have our pressure flow shields, we have all these tools on our tool belt where we can really impact the BPH, BPO care pathway. I think that it's important for us to recognize that a tsunami is coming. We know that by 2019, there's going to be almost 100 million men in the world facing the challenges of benign prostatic obstruction. Late stage BPH is coming to everyone's front door throughout the world in every country, and we need to recognize it's coming, and what are we going to do about it? Once again, we salute and honor Defender Amanda Chung in Australia with all her valuable work, helping us actually take a look at the face of bladder death and dysfunction when an obstructing prostate is not taken care of for the right patient at the right time within the window of curability when warranted. And we recognize her and thank her for this, and really giving us something to visualize, as we are visual animals, that we understand what we are trying to defend and what are we trying to fight against, which is bladder death and dysfunction in late stage BPH. I put this up here that I agree language is really important. Unfortunately, the American Urologic Association, we still use our guidelines for BPH, but we don't treat histology or benign prostatic hyperplasia. I do want to take the time, though, to recognize in remembrance of someone who passed last year, a stalwart defender of the detrusor, urologist Eric Friedman, who really had the insight to say that maybe BPH is really about bladder preservation health. And I think that was part of the inspiration for our whole crusade. And with that thought, understanding that BPO, or benign prostatic obstruction, language is important. And right, when we use the word obstruction, it reminds us that this is a mechanical problem, that there is a bladder pump and that there's an obstructed piping. And then if we take the inspiration from Dr. Friedman, BPO can also mean, in our heart of hearts, the bladder preservation optimization. We understand we've put a lot of time and effort, and we've had tremendous gains in this golden era of BPH, looking at the treatment phase and the post-treatment phase of the BPO care pathway. And it's now time to devote more resources and attention to the pre-treatment phase. How do we make it more efficient when we make those decisions in a shared decision-making fashion with our patients about the timing of deobstruction when warranted? And I just wanted to take the time, as this crusade is growing, that we just understand who we are, where we're trying to get to, what are our values. And I think that's really important, as now I'm seeing some of the conversations on LinkedIn becoming more dynamic. So number one, our vision is that we want all BPH, BPO patients to be living the best version of their lives, chemical-free and catheter-free. I think that's really important. That's what we're trying to get to. We want every man to be the best version 2.0 that they can be. With that said, our mission is to empower all of these patients with the educational experience to make the best decision even faster by highlighting that bladder health is at risk if the choice is not made to take definitive action about their problem. Defender Austin Slade had a nice addition to this that I just wanted to add, as he is really pushing hashtag bladder health 3.0. We really appreciate all his efforts. He's done a great job of just trying to support and help grow our crusade. And he added that, yes, and also we're trying to maximize male bladder health and longevity with the timely detection and prevention of bladder damage. How true. And when we look at our crusade, there's really the triple Ps. The preservation of bladder health. Yes, we need to prioritize that. 2, the polypharmacy epidemic. We need to put an end to that. And 3, preventing late-stage BPH. For that reason, we created the 5 stages of bladder health. Things slow down, the overactive bladder, the rebellious child, the heart attack, heart failure. A quick comment here before I forget. One of our defenders brought up a good point, that they were concerned that when we use the word polypharmacy epidemic, it would suggest that practitioners, urologists don't really know what they're doing with medications, and that there is a role for medications. We totally agree. I totally agree. There is a role for medications. What we are advocating is that we understand what that role is. It is not a therapeutic measures. Medications are not therapies. They do not deobstruct. BPO, benign prostatic obstruction, just like ureteral pelvic junction obstruction, coronary obstruction, they are mechanical problems that deserve mechanical solutions when warranted at the right time. And so understand that we are not anti-medications, but we are pro-data, pro-bladder health baselines, pro-education about late-stage BPH. And that's really important to recognize. So when we talk about polypharmacy epidemic, it's not that we're anti-medications. We're anti the bad habit of, Mr. Smith, you got a problem, take a pill. Mr. Smith, you still have a problem, take a higher dose. Mr. Smith, you still got a problem, take a second drug. We are trying to get out of that rut and transition faster to the process of going, hey, we've got a problem. Let's get the data. Let's see what's going on, see what solutions are there, and which ones fit you, Mr. Smith, and treat it if we need to when warranted. Something to remember about a quick acronym is, just obviously we're talking about guys who are avoiding, and everyone's P's, has to P or P's. And we want a care pathway that's going to be personalized, effective, efficient, really important, those last two, simple and safe. And when we talk about effectiveness, it's doing the right thing. And what we're trying to say is, yes, we are managing symptoms, but let's raise the bar, because now we live in the golden era of BPH. We can take this to the next level, which is that we are prioritizing the preservation of bladder health. 4 simple words. And I do believe if we change the language of our guidelines, those 4 simple words, everything else will naturally evolve in a positive way to create this type of pathway that is simple, safe, effective, efficient, and personalized. And to be efficient is to really recognize that we need to now focus on the pre-treatment phase of the care pathway, and recognize one of the big speed bumps that limits us is that when we think that medications are therapy, it really delays deobstruction and puts bladders needlessly at risk for death and dysfunction. We've talked about this. This is the overall game plan. Yes, let's prioritize the preservation of bladder health, making sure everyone, all patients, get a good bladder health counseling, understanding what's at risk, remembering that the bladder is untransplantable. Remember, there's only 2 organs that cannot be transplanted, the brain and the bladder. It is too precious, too amazingly complex. We need to take better care of it. And understanding the 5 stages of bladder health that we talked about, things slow down, the overactive bladder, the rebellious child, the heart attack, heart failure. And getting that bladder health baseline. We live in a great era where we can screen people with IPSS scores and be concerned and say there's a problem here when it scores 8 and above. And then in addition to that, try and understand if we see a Uroflow Qmax of less than 15 cc's per second, that's another indicator that we need to be doing further screening and diagnostics, as well as looking at PVR and PVR ratio from the wonderful work of defender Emanuele Rubelotta in Italy, suggesting that maybe there's a 20% threshold above which we should then trigger an investigation in better diagnostics. Because when we do the diagnostics for a bladder health baseline, remember our cystoscopic swords. We all know what a trabeculated bladder looks like. We need to trust the truth of trabeculations, that bladder is in trouble and needs our help as defenders of the detrusor. And then when available, if you have access to pressure flow data, that quantitative data that can really add a lot of support and provide visual confirmation and visual inspiration to our patients to take action about their prostate to preserve their bladder health, because they don't want to be that guy that waited too late and ended up in late stage BPH. And then the second column on this slide is understanding that when we choose surgical deobstructive technologies, that we need to factor in not just prostate size, but really prostate shape and detrusor function. Because once we have risk stratified bladders, based on how at risk they are for death and dysfunction, it is an important criteria for what type of surgical technologies we should be looking at. And finally, let us explore together, should there be a screening age for all men at which we do some basic bladder health baseline, whether it's cystoscopy for bladder health, just like we do colonoscopy for colon cancer or mammography for breast cancer. On the slide, I suggested 50 years old, just because many men have that number in their head already. In regards to colon cancer screening, yes, 45 is currently what they do for colon cancer, but approximately. I would also suggest maybe we base it off of the 50,000 patient pressure flow data set that was published by Journal Urology by Kaplan, Kohler, Kausick, looking at the point that most men's bladders peak out at around the age 62. Well, then why don't we look at maybe screening at the starting of age 60 to round it out? Because remember, we're trying to find that balance point amongst the four elements of efficiency for a BPO care pathway: treatment durability, a man's vitality, window of curability, as well as economic sustainability. So when we look at screening ages, we have to really look about the impact of cost versus the benefit. And then finally, recognizing that medications are not therapeutic measures and they need to be relegated to the appropriate category of temporizing measures, just like a Foley catheter, right? Guy shows up in stage 4, late stage BPH in the emergency room and retention. We put in a temporizing Foley catheter to temporize the situation until we can get the patient to the urology office so we can do bladder health counseling, bladder health baseline, and look for surgical options when warranted. So in a similar fashion, medications are temporizing measures for those men who are already in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Things slow down. The overactive bladder, the rebellious child, urge urinary incontinence. So important to ask that and bring that up, because it will really bring out those symptoms that are so embarrassing, so humiliating for so many men. And as we work together, we are really trying to work directly with the patients out there to educate them, to really push the question, hey, doc, what about my bladder? Because my bladder health matters. And I think we are going to work together through podcasts, through LinkedIn, through general dissemination, tipping our hat to Defender Austin Slade, who did some research. It's going to cost us, unfortunately, at least here in the Americas, about $247,000 that we need to raise and think about if we want to get to the concept of a Susan G. Komen Foundation, just like the Pink Ribbon campaign for breast cancer. We can do the same to increase awareness of bladder health for BPH, benign prostatic obstruction. And I'd like to end on understanding something as our dialogue becomes more animated, something to think about, and something I use all the time. I've used it now for the last 9 years for my medical practice, my solo practice, which is the 4 agreements. It's a little thicker book if you get the full version. But I would recommend actually that we all can actually get the small mini version. It's great. Hopefully that'll go into focus for you. There you go. Really small. It's packaged like a little gift. Over the last 9 years, every time I do an interview in person for a new hire, I give it as a gift. And I ask, hey, just check this out. This is something we believe in. And it's been really important for the culture of my business here. So understanding the 4 agreements. Hey, yes, 1, we're trying our best. 2, we're being impeccable with our word. We are speaking with integrity. And probably the most important are the last 2. And I think it really helps to build the proper culture of our business here. And I hope for the culture of our tribe at Man vs. Prostate, which is don't make assumptions. And then number 4 is don't take things personally. And I say that now because as our conversations get more animated, it is always natural for folks, as we really try and be catalysts for change, that assumptions are made and we take things personally. And so as I guide my own staff, start every conversation, hey, I don't want to make any assumptions. And they already will know on the other side, they don't want to take anything personally. It's just the one person trying to explore the situation and find solutions. And that's something we're going to need to do, especially as in 2024, we are hoping to get out the Man vs. Prostate Manifesto, just like the EAU put out a manifesto for incontinence. Suggestions from key opinion leaders from around the world that we'd like to submit to the AUA guidelines, the EAU guidelines, and the NICE guidelines, just as thoughts about how we potentially can improve or evolve the guidelines to reflect in this modern age, the modern man who wants to live the best version of their lives, chemical free and catheter free. So that is my slide deck today. I just want to thank you all as we journey on together to accelerate the change away from a drug first pathway to a data first pro diagnostic bladder centric paradigm. And we can do that together with our cystoscopic swords and our pressure flow shields. That's something we can do. So I'll see you guys hopefully next week. I'm just trying to get into a role and understand the technology. Today, I'm trying to use a USB mic. A quick shout out to Backtable Urology with Defender Jose Silva. Thank you for having me on last night to talk about our shared crusade. They were very kind to offer to provide this USB mic. So hopefully the audio is pretty good for you guys, or I may go back to a DSLR input. So thinking of you guys all. Have a positive week, and we'll talk to you guys soon. All right. Have a great one. Bye.